HBCUs are more than a trend.
Yeah.
We're forever a part of the culture. HBCU Pulse always has you on lock. From the shade room to your favorite news feed, and now on your TV and radio. We are the number one outlet for HBCU culture. Follow HBCU Pulse on social media and visit hbcupulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community.
Yes, sir. We are here. What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of our round of interviews with our partner, the HBCU Experience, for their latest book covering the Kings out here, the HBCU Experience, the HBCU Royal University Kings, second edition, making it happen. Listen, this book here, it hits a little bit different, because I'm talking to some younger Kings, like some folks that I've seen, some folks that we posted on Instagram that's been making it happen in this generation. So shout out to the Kings from back in the day. But the ones now that they do it a little bit different. And I'm about to bring somebody up that is doing it real different. He did it real different. There's some amazing things with Mr. HBCU, amazing things as Mr. Tennessee State. Listen, we're going to bring on Mr. Mark T. Davis Jr. in the building right now. He got the outfit together. It's Valentine's Day tomorrow. He got it together. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to be here. How you doing?
I'm great. Like, you got something about the outfit. I like the outfit, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I had a Valentine's photo shoot, so yeah, rocking the hearts, showing the love.
Listen, hey, still doing the King stuff. I see it. You got the King photos you're going on. I feel you. So, hey, let's go on and get to it, man. So let's get started. So tell us a little bit of who you are.
All right. So I am Mark Timothy Davis Jr., almost a two-time graduate of Tennessee State University. I graduated in May of 2022 with my bachelor's in communications, hailing all the way from the Queen City of Cincinnati, Ohio, where the Kings and Queens wear the crowns, but the crowns do not wear us. And yeah, I'm blessed to be here. Blessed to be a co-author of this book, and yeah, I'm very excited.
I love it. So listen, like, communications major, I'm a communications major graduate, so I feel you. We here with it, because we got to stick together, because folks be playing with our major and our degree, so we have a real good conversation. So let's start with this. What made you choose Tennessee State as your HBCU?
So originally, I did not want to go. My sister went there, so my family was like, "You're going here." It was 4 hours away from home. I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna go." But I told them, I'm like, "We can make a compromise." So I went on the tour, and immediately, what stood different from every other HBCU I toured, TSU was, it was a group of guys that were near the Greek Row, and they were like, come holler at us. And they just talked to our whole group, and they were saying, like, here at TSU, we don't want kings and, queens walking around with do-rags, bonnets, sagging. And I'm like, it just touched me in such a long way. And I'm like, okay, called my parents, like, I want to come to TSU. They're like, that's all you had to tell us. So seeing that and seeing how many Black men were dressed up in suits and really about pointing to the youth, it just really, I was like, I'm sold.
I love it. So did you tour any other schools? Are there any other schools that were on your list before Tennessee State?
My second option was Tuskegee. I don't know what it was it was so selling to me, but when we went there, the tour, it was just, I remember they was like TU and everybody was screaming, I just remember everything. We went to Dillard, Xavier, we visited Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, Spelman, but it was TSU and Tuskegee. So those were my top two, and my family, like, we're not 9.5 hours away from home. That's not happening. So TSU is where it was.
So you talked about how you had, like, the upperclassmen, they came and talked to you all about not wearing do-rags, presenting yourself the right way. Like, what about that interaction really made you say, this is my school? Like what was it about that made that interaction special?
It just seemed like something that I would watch in film or movies actually happens in real life. So when I saw them saying, I'm like, oh my God, this is stuff I hear on the quad when it used to be on BET. And I'm like, and I'm actually seeing this in my real life. I'm like, this is real. It's not for the media. It's not for TV. This is actually something that, we actually want to pour into. And when I was in high school, I always did student leadership. So it just meant to me as a young student leader, I'm like, oh my God, it means so much to me seeing Black men talking about, how we're going to change the stereotype that the world puts on us. And I remember they told me, all your life you're going to be a minority, but here you're 4 years, you're a majority. And as soon as they told me that, I was like, oh yeah, this is the place, this is home.
Hey, listen, that's the HBCU student leadership right there. Like, that's how we do it. Get the folks in there, let them know what's going on, and it changes the whole entire tone. So let's talk about that freshman year. So you chose Tennessee State. You had that amazing interaction when you visited the campus. So what was freshman year like for you?
My first week, I cried. I'm not gonna lie. I cried in my dorm. My parents was like, oh, this man, he's not gonna make it through next semester. Like, they just knew in their hearts I was gonna go home after first semester, but I just had to find something that was familiar to me from high school. And immediately I joined Pep Club, and that was something that was so familiar to me. And that's where from there it was done, and it was a done deal. I got out my room, I met people who I could, familiarize myself with. I met families. I joined my first organization on campus, and from then I was like, oh, I'm never coming back home. So my freshman year, I feel like if I would have stayed in that room, I would have went home. But since I got out and just took a gamble, did it scared, it set the trajectory for the rest of my collegiate experience at TSU.
I love that. Like, I think it's interesting when it comes to freshman year, like that moment when you're dropped off and that first moment that you're by yourself. Like, I never forget when I was at Fort Valley, and it was my first, my move-in day, and my aunt, started crying, and I was low-key holding back tears. I'm like, what the world? I wasn't expecting that, because it's such a big step to go to college. That's like the introduction into adulthood. So like, yep. What made you stay in your room and cry for that week? Like, what made that happen? Were you nervous about the experience? Were you homesick? Do you miss your family? Like, what made you stay in your room and cry for that week?
I felt alone. Like, there was nobody from my group of friends from high school. Some were supposed to come to Tennessee State, but they all ventured out their own way. So it was like, okay, I have nobody here that I know that, if I need to call right now, like, let's go to the pep rally together, I have nobody here. So I felt alone. I felt like I had to start all over, and it felt so scary. But, I was just like, okay, cool. You come to college, this is a place where you can create whoever you want to be. So I just went out and I literally just was myself. And from there, it was said and done. I just was like, in high school, you go through your phases where you're trying to learn who you are. I'm like, okay, I'm coming to college and I know who I am. So I'm just going to be who I am. And it just made me step out my shell more. So I'm definitely glad I cried. Looking now at it, I cannot believe this young man in a room crying his freshman year became Mr. Tennessee State University. Like, it's crazy because it makes no sense. But, God did, literally.
Right. So what do you have any advice for like freshmen that feel that same way? Because I know that every freshman isn't just lit during orientation week, where it's like, oh, I'm out, I'm networking with my peers, I'm going to different events on campus. There are some students that feel the same way. They're going to feel that same way come August. So do you have any advice for those students coming into college to help them enjoy the experience more?
I would say my advice is to find something that is familiar to you. Me, it was Pep Club. In high school, I did it. So immediately when I saw it at a collegiate experience, I'm like, oh my God, this is something that feels like home. And right there, that's where I started to gain more friends. I had a reason to come out. People would be like, Mark, come here with us, or, let's go to the Cavs together. So right there, I found something that was familiar to me. And they gave me all the confidence at football games and yelling and screaming. And that's when I started to learn, who people were. And they're like, who is this freshman that got so much energy? So, I would say find something that's familiar to you, find something that's home so you can get comfortable. And then, like in college, you leave home and you have to be on your own. So Pep Club gave me my home, but they built me the confidence to, venture out and do more at TSU.
I love that, lady. That was an amazing freshman story. I hope that's in the book. Like, that was good. All right. So let's talk about sophomore year. So freshman year, you had a transformative experience. So sophomore year, what's sophomore year like for you?
Sophomore year was a lot. It was super duper fun. I remember since I was Mr. Sophomore at the time. So, it was my first year at a collegiate level student government. It was amazing, being a mister of my class, just learning really how a student leader is at a college experience. So it was so fun. I remember we went to the Kings and Queens conference in New Orleans, all the battle of the bands we went to, every game we went to. It was so fun, but I knew sophomore year was the year that I had to, okay, forget all the student leadership. What do you want to do at TSU? So I was already in a modeling troupe named the Allure Modeling Troupe, and then I joined Collegiate 100, and I'm like, okay, I have a family with the Lord. Now I have brothers with Collegiate. Now I'm good. I feel comfortable. I feel safe. Let's, enjoy sophomore year with what we have. So I just was active in both those organizations. And then COVID came. So when COVID came, spring semester, they told us, okay, we're not going to send y'all home. We're just going to, quarantine. And then it just started ramping up, and we was like, yeah, y'all got to go. So after that point, sophomore year in my eyes was over, but I didn't know over the summer I will still be able to virtually be Mr. Sophomore, and being a communication major, I felt like that was right on my avenue, and it was still comfortable to me.
That's real. So I think that's a very amazing point you brought up. And I think that we got to talk about this. I want to ask you this, right? So one thing I always say is that there's a clear difference between before COVID and after COVID. I think that we still have not gotten back to what life was before March 2020, because that 2019 homecoming was different than last year's homecoming. It felt different. So just for you being in school, you were Mr. Sophomore and you go into your junior year, and it's the COVID era. Like, what was different? Not even just like it being virtual and all these different things in the mask. Like, what was different from your freshman year to your sophomore year and your junior year in regards to how COVID affected your experience?
I would say spirit. It seemed like what was a tradition, the tradition left. It was those seniors when I was a sophomore that they left, and the people who came in, they couldn't share the tradition with the freshmen because we couldn't really be in person. So I feel like the tradition and the family aspect just slowly started to drift away. And then, we will all still be on campus, a little social distance. You can do this and that, but it just never felt like how it used to. And like we would kind of say, like, this is, a different TSU. This is not the old TSU. And people would be like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, simply, it's just, I can't explain. It's just like a feeling that you have. It's like, oh my God, I'm with family. It's like a family reunion. But now it seems like everybody's scared. Like, people are shyer. I definitely think COVID had, a lot to do with people's social skills. We're used to communicating over camera. Now you're in person, and now it's kind of like, okay, how do I do this again? So it was very, very odd. It was weird, but it was very uncomfortable. That's a good word to put it.
So in that same regard, how was student leadership? Because I think I've heard that, because I graduated 2019 right before COVID, which is sort of wild to think about. Like, the semester before COVID, I graduated. And I heard from a lot of student leaders around the nation at that time that it was hard to instill that tradition because of that separation. Like you said, because of being on camera and not being able to interact with each other face to face, up close and personal, because of COVID. So as a student leader, how did you navigate that and manage that?
So at the time, as soon as my junior year, I became president of our modeling troupe. And I'm like, okay, cool. How can I make COVID work within us? And immediately, using my degree, I'm like, we have to, boost up our YouTube channel. So the same people I worked with when I made videos as Mr. Sophomore, I worked with them when I was president. And I'm like, okay, let's, create a social footprint. So when we move out of this year of COVID, this still will last years down the line. My goal was, okay, cool. I want to have 1,000 views on this video by the time a year from now. And that goal was achieved. And I think those little ideas that were so small then made so much change now. Those are the reason that the organization is still thriving and still alive, because the decisions that people made during COVID. I think a lot of people let the pandemic kind of shut them down, or, and I think it's proved, who can knock down any obstacle that comes in their way. And, I just made lemons out of lemonade when I'm like, okay, COVID, I can't do it in person. Okay, somebody got a video, somebody got a camera, somebody got a drone, somebody got an idea, and let's put it on paper and let's make it happen.
I like that. So you really, really brilliantly broke down your junior year because you had to do with COVID. You became the president of your modeling troupe. What was the rest of junior year like for you?
The rest of the junior year, it was very quiet. I was like, okay, let me be strategic about it. Let me just sit in the back so nobody sees me coming. So I was just, in the back building and preparing and preparing. In September, I already knew what campaign I wanted to do. So, I'm just making sure that, I'm keeping my grades together so I can run and nothing can stop me. I'm making sure, I'm staying, around social with people, not doing it just to get the votes, just because, I don't want to stay in my room. So, I was making sure I was still active in my organizations. I was enjoying what I could with what we had. And, when it became that time to prepare to run, that's when I started to kind of, okay, let me pop out. I remember I grew my hair out because I'm like, the barbershops are closed. Let me just grow my hair out. And immediately I cut my hair and people was like, oh, you cut your hair. I'm like, what you mean by that? They're like, you got something coming. I'm like, you just have to wait and see. It's like I cut my hair all out with the old and in with the new. And yeah, it was time to go.
I love that. So let's talk about your campaign. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm on your Instagram right now. I'm like, man, I'm trying to find these campaign graphics. All right.
I can't laugh. But like after I graduated, I'm like, okay, let me become a new person. I'm not the student anymore, so let me try to change it up. Let me look like a professional. But people always tell me like, you need to make a highlight and just keep all your things there. So I'm really gonna do that.
You should, because folks look at that. You have the student leaders that come up when it's election time. They want to see at Tennessee State what worked. It might be some folks at Fort Valley or at FAMU that want to see, hey, what other King campaigns worked within this time frame back in the day. So you gotta put that back up. Come on. You got a fire campaign. You got to tell us about your campaign. Tell us about it.
So my campaign was Blue is King, and I took it from Beyonce's Black is King, but Blue stood for Building Legacies Upon Existence. And I just remember when I saw the film, I saw it in July when it came out, and it's never meant like, oh, I can make this out of a campaign until I seen some people doing it. I'm like, cool, but everybody did Black. Everybody kept Black is King, Black is King. And one day I'm coming from a trip and I'm thinking in my mind, what acronym could I come up with Blue? And why Blue? Blue, of course, TSU. And then the words just came to themselves. So immediately I started thinking, okay, I need to do a campaign video. And I remember in Beyonce, when she dropped the trailer, it was something coming from space and it crashed to Earth. And in my campaign video, I was coming from space, and my modeling name is Asteroid. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So immediately I come to Earth, and I started at TSU, and I just had a lot of things around me. I had a pom-pom representing Pep Club. I had my modeling attire representing modeling, and then I had my collegiate apparel representing collegiate. And I'm like, this is the journey. And I remember I had a crown and I touched it and it glimpsed at what I'm going towards. So, I just thought, okay, what would Beyonce do? Literally. I'm like, she's a creative genius. She's a perfectionist. So I just kept going and going and going. I thought everything. I did an event called Brown Skin Girl, because why not? That song came from Black is King. So I have no option but to do it. And it was creating the queens of my campus. Like, yes, I'm still running to be king, but, the campus is not just male. So, I just literally thought, when Beyonce planned this, how would she plan it if she did it for a campaign? I, marketed my graphics off of her graphics. She had a lion, I had a tiger. She wore a leopard print, I wore a tiger print. Like, I'm like, okay, I see everything you're doing and I'm going to do the same thing. She did Black Parade, I did Black Parade. I just really was intentional with everything I did because I knew it was virtual. Hashtags, everything. I made the graphic look like a movie flyer because it was a movie. So, I felt like I had to be very intentional. And again, I used my degree. I'm like, I'm studying this, so I might as well use it to my advantage.
I love that. And you said something key. You've been saying key things this whole entire interview. Like, you did an event for the women on campus
Yeah.
because black men aren't the main population at any HBCU except for Morehouse, because clearly, like, the women are the main ones that's going to be voting. Not to say the men don't care. It's just that there are more women on campus. So you did brown skin girl. I'm pretty sure that he ate that up. You know what I mean? So, like, when you won, how did that feel? You put in that work. You made it happen. You had this amazing journey to Tennessee State from your freshman year to that point. So how did it feel when you found out you won?
It didn't feel real, honestly. But the worst part about it, I'm like, okay, I won. All right, let's get to work. Like, it's like, okay, next up is preparing for Mr. HBCU. Like, that's how my mind kept going. People was like, are you proud? Are you proud? I'm like, I won't be proud until I'm done. And they're like, why are you thinking like that? I'm like, that's just how I am. It's just like, you know, I can be proud to win, but am I going to be proud of the work that I'm doing in the road to create a legacy after I'm gone? And I'm like, that's when I'll be proud if, you know, a year from now, people can say, oh my God, I remember when you were king. But I remember, like, immediately when I won, I literally couldn't, like, imagine it. It said my name and I'm sitting here like, and people around me like, Mark, you knew you won. Like, you know, why were you so nervous? I'm like, I did not know I had it. Like, they're like, you knew you had it. I'm like, I did. And I was very, you know, nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I put my all in it. So I'm like, prepared that the option that I cannot come out on top. So when they said my name, I remember I touched the person next to me. I don't even know who it was. And I'm like, oh my God, they just said my name. And it was just surreal, literally. Felt like
Listen, I gotta ask this, right? Because I hear that often when it comes to candidates that clearly are front runners. Like, you clearly are the person that people are gonna vote for. So y'all really be like, I don't know if I'm gonna win. Y'all really think that for real?
I know some people probably think, oh no, I got this in the bag. You know, this mine. You know, I've been working for this, but me, I didn't. You know, I'm like, I don't know what people. I spent my whole junior year kind of quiet. My other competitors probably spent their junior year, you know, working, going out, you know, being out with the students, and I'm like, I was kind of quiet. And I'm like, did I not do enough as Mr. Sophomore so people can remember, you know, oh, he was a great king as Mr. Sophomore. He'll be an even better king as Mr. TSU. He was a great president. He'll be a great Mr. TSU. You know, I was like, did I do enough? So I was just very, like, you know, I didn't want to be cocky, like, oh yeah, I know I got this. I'm like, you know, I'm going to make sure regardless of if I win or lose, this is something that people can say, this was the best king campaign I've ever seen in our 31 kings at the time at TSU. And that's what I achieved throughout the week. And I remember old advisors would ask me, like, you know, how do you feel? Like, you know, and be honest. You can this is your moment, let your humble down. I'm like, regardless, I'm happy with what I did. You know, I think what I did has never been done, and I'm proud of that. So
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about senior year. Let's talk about the Mr. Tennessee State reign, because you said that you were preparing for Mr. HBCU the moment you won. Mm-hmm. And you did your thing, Mr. HBCU. Now, like, we're going to talk about that in a second, but tell us about that summer. So what was that summer like for you?
The summer, honestly, it felt like an identity crisis. And I'm like, okay, cool. The whole summer the whole winter preparing to run for Mr. TSU. Now I'm in the role. Okay, I'm no longer just, as people would say, you're no longer a normal student. You're kind of a celebrity at your university. So the summer, it was constant planning. It was like, I'm treating my reign as a campaign. You know, what is my reign's platform? What is my reign's events that I want to do? I remember my campaign manager told me, don't use this event during your campaign week. Use this event when you win. This is more of a reign event rather than a campaign event. So I thought really what I felt like the males on my university needed, and the university in general. I remember people always tell us, you know, it doesn't go to the person who needs it. It doesn't go to the person who deserves it. It goes to the person that needs it. And coming to it, I'm like, you know, I'm thinking, why do I need Mr. TSU? It's like, you know, I feel like my campus needs me as Mr. TSU, but being Mr. TSU taught me a lot about my mental health. So I felt like I needed that, because if not, I would have never taken it seriously, and it eventually could have taken me out. So,
wow. And listen, whoever told you that about a campaign event versus a reign event, they the GOAT. Okay, because that is so true. and I've told people this before as well in my campaign consulting journey, is like you got folks that be having like events like it's coronation week. No, it is campaign week. Like they having a brunch. Meanwhile, people giving out snow cones on the courtyard. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like folks gotta understand that. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Student leadership. You see what I'm talking about? So you doing it right? You see? Like I like that. I like that a lot. All right. So let's talk about during the year. All right. So you said that mental health was a big factor for you, and I think that's something we often don't talk about enough. We talk about it more. We talk about mental health more, but I think that sometimes we neglect it because we want to be on the scene. We want to be outside. So for you, how did you navigate and tackle mental health during your reign?
So my best way to do it were church, of course. Like, I feel like, those were just some days. Every day, I would go to church. It would be some days where it just seemed like, okay, God, you made me come here for a reason. And it would be a place where I could pour it out and lean on the Spirit to guide me through. On other days, it was just the events I did. I remember I did an event called Personal Foul, and I related a basketball to a human's life, and I related the durability. So, if a basketball goes flat, we can go buy another one. If we throw a basketball and it goes into a lake and we don't get it, we can buy another one. But if, I'm 23, I bruised myself years and after year, I can't go swatch out my body for another person. I can't do that. So, I had to really write on the balls, the personal fouls I'm taking against myself, whether it's not grieving, not, being a perfectionist, not giving myself grace. And anytime I would commit that foul, I would acknowledge it on the ball. So, I just tried to give myself grace throughout the year, but I didn't do it anyway. So.
Nah, trust. I totally understand that. Give yourself grace is hard because, especially when you're a perfectionist, you want to do things the right way. So trust me, I totally understand that more than I'm telling you. So the Mr. HBCU competition, all right? So you competed in the 18th edition of that competition in 2022, and you got first runner-up. And Tennessee State has that lineage. When it comes to the Hall of Fame, when it comes to Mr. HBCU, y'all have dominated that competition in recent years. So let's talk about like that. So you were preparing for the competition from when you won all the way back in like April of 2021, and then you make it happen when it comes to January 2022. So tell us about that process of getting prepared.
So really, I knew, I watched who my king and queen was. My queen placed first runner up at Miss NBCA. My king placed second runner up at Mr. HBCU. So it's like, okay, let me study what you all did and, ask, what is so important? What did y'all do that y'all, knew was the way to go? They always told me oratory is what matters most. Oratory. It has the most points. It tells the difference from the winner in the different placements of the court. So, that was something I took very seriously. Also, I be putting way too much, stress on my shoulders. My advisor at the time was my Modeling Troops founder, and then the last Mr. HBCU at TSU was another founder of my Modeling Troops. So I'm like, okay, this is perfect. One founder is taking me to the competition, and the last founder and the last person to win was my founder. So I'm like, I gotta win. So I'm just driving myself, practicing more and more. Even have my court help me. I do my oratory in front of them, do my talent in front of them. I'm like, be explicit. Tell me if it sucks. If it does, be real with me. Tell me if it's not convincing. I did it in front of SGA, and they were like, we really think you can place if you do it like you're doing it now. But if you really, grab the emotion, and I remember our topic was, you good, bro. They're like, Mark, you literally talk about mental health all the time. Tap into what is true to you, and there's no reason why you should not lead this competition with Mr. HBCU, the crown, and then some. So, I just really had to give myself constructive criticism from people and allow people to nitpick at what I was doing. So the same thing they're telling me, I don't make those mistakes when it's showtime.
So you said that when it came to the start of your reign, when you won Mr. Tennessee State, that you were like, I got to work. Like I'm focused on what's next, right? So you get first runner up. Now we know that isn't being Mr. HBCU, but being first runner up, especially with how Mr. HBCU changed it, it's a court. Like you're still involved within that system. So when you got first runner up, like how did that feel? Like were you vindicated? Were you excited? Like how did it feel at that time?
I actually was very happy. Like, I'm like, I am very happy with this because I remember my advisor told me, like, I know you wanted to win, but I'm letting you know TSU has not had a first runner up in 6 years. And I'm like, that means the most to me. I'm like, and then I remember the last Mr. HBCU at TSU, he reached out to me and was like, I am very proud of you. That was all the validation I needed. I'm like, I wanted to make those who came before me proud. So, and I remember my sister told me, she was straight with me. She was like, I'm glad you lost. And I'm like, why? And she was like, because stress killed my uncle and I didn't want it to take my brother out too. And when she told me that, I'm like, you know what, you're right. Cause I know how I am. And I'm glad she told me that because immediately when she said that, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And fast forward, post-grad depression, I couldn't have handled all that the stress on myself and being Mr. HBCU. So like people always say, I may thought I deserved it, but I didn't need it because I wouldn't have been able to handle it. And I needed first runner up. That was great. God was like, you worked a lot for this. So, I'm not gonna have you win, but I'm gonna have you place. So I was very happy with what I got. I was very happy to experience the whole conference again. I love Mr. HBCU, the second runner up. We caught ourselves hot and ready. Like we loved each other. Like they're my brothers now. Anytime we talk, it's always a good time. Love the conference, the staff there, and those, being first runner up now. Then it helped me build connections. Now I'm a member of the Mr. HBCU staff team. So it's everything happens for a reason, literally.
It does, and I want to move to your post-grad journey because I think you said something interesting. And then we're going to talk about your chapter in the book, right? So the post-grad journey, I've gone through it, and I had to go through it during COVID because I graduated fall 2019. Then I had a few months where I was cool. And then COVID happened, and then it was just a bunch of uncertainty, right? So for you graduate, you're at the apex of that HBCU student experience. You're Mr. Tennessee State. Tennessee State is an amazing top-of-the-line HBCU with a lot of press, a lot of attention, always posting on HBCU Pulse, HBCU Buzz, all these different places, right? So you're at the pinnacle of our genre, of the pinnacle of our community. And then you graduate, and oftentimes as student leaders, we're like, hey, I was at the top. Now, as an adult, I got to work my way up. Like, did you feel that same way? And how'd you navigate immediately graduating?
So immediately after I graduated, I went straight back to school. So after graduation, I became a graduate assistant in our residence life department. So I never left. And, I think it's a pro and a con to that. The pro is, I had a safe place. I had a journey. I had the connection still. But the con is, I feel like, me trying to separate myself from being king was hard when I'm always reminded by the people like Trey Uno or hey King, this and that. Like, oh, you still here? Like just hearing that constantly, it's like, okay, am I not doing what I was supposed to be doing? Should I went home? Like it felt so odd. And I'm like, like you said, the level we're on, I just graduated. I took a picture with the Vice President of the United States of America, and now I feel like I'm lost. The career I wanted, I'm not following. The job I wanted, I don't have. The funds I want, I don't have. The place I'm in, I'm not in. I was so angry at myself. I was angry at God. I'm like, we prayed about this and you gave me nothing. And, it was an experience and a journey I really had to go through because, I'm like, I wanted this, I wanted that, but I did not need any of that. What I had then prepared me for the person I am now. And I'm like, God, I thank you. I was mad then, but I'm extremely appreciative now.
I love that. Like you going in right now. Like we really talking about it. See, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about like talking to, just folks modern day, like modern day kings, because the experience now is different because we compare ourselves on social media and we see folks that we know getting married. I know that's my journey. Graduating in 2019, it's 2024, almost 5 years since I've graduated. And I see folks getting married. I see folks buying houses. And I'm like, man, I should be at that point. Like, yeah, I got posts going, but I should be at that point. So I think that's something that's important when it comes to that post-grad journey. And before we talk about your chapter in the HBCU experience, the Royal University Kings second edition. I want you to give advice to an upcoming graduate because it's the spring right now. There's going to be some folks that's graduating, that's joining us on this alumni side in a few months, and they need to prepare and get ready. So what's your advice to them?
So my advice to just graduates in general, it is okay not to have a plan. Like, it's okay to go home and plan there where you are comfortable and you're safe. Not, it's not, I'd rather them plan at home where you have a community than you just immediately jump somewhere and you're stuck. You're like, okay, I did this off, impulse, and now I don't have enough money here to pay rent for the next 3 months. I can't, get from point A to point Z. So it's okay to go home and take a break and decompress of all the 4 years of what you've been through, and then take your break and plan. And then to the graduates who were student leaders, please, immediately go into counseling, because I think it's so bad for us because, like you said, we have this Hollywood experience of a senior year, and now it's all gone. It's like, okay, they moved on right to the next. Like people in corporate jobs, you're replaceable. Okay, immediately when the next mister is announced, all right, you're done for. We moving on to the next. So you have to be prepared that you'll always be remembered as whatever king you were, but it's okay to let it go, and how to let it go, and how to be proud of what you did. And I think those are the two advice I would give to graduates and student leaders that graduate.
Listen, I know that your chapter got to have 100 pages, okay? You got to have some room, okay, to put all this advice in, all right? So I need you to tell us about your chapter in the book, The HBCU Experience, the HBCU Royal University Kings second edition. You don't got to give us too much, but you really, gave us a lot here in your interview. So what do you talk about in your chapter?
So my chapter, I, kind of describe it as if somebody closed their eyes and my chapter was read to them, they would visualize everything I'm saying. My chapter touches on a simile between a car and life. So I'm talking about being on a road, and I'm comparing, everything with cars and obstacles to my life. So, I feel like a lot of times I was ready to crash, running straight forward, not worried about my mental health, not worried about my grades, not worried about what makes me happy. I was ready to crash. And, I had to realize that some days I have to put the car in neutral and take a break. So, when I was riding, I'm like, I constantly always talk about, I'm on a road, I'm on a road, I'm on a road. And on a road is a car, and a car has an engine. A car has mirrors to look behind you. It has gas that you have to put in it to keep it moving. And I thought, how is everything that I've been through as Mr. TSU and at TSU relates to a car? And I realized it was perfect. I'm like, from the moment I came here, I felt empty when I was crying in my bedroom, to, at the end of my collegiate experience, I'm still driving, but I'm about to crash, and I just don't know it yet. And I just constantly relate to the obstacles. And in the end, my favorite part is how I'm literally saying, like, whoever's following reading, you're eventually going to pass me. And, and when you do, I'm going to just honk my horn, like, keep going. Like, so that's really how my chapter is. It's just it's talking about the road.
They need to give you another chapter. I'm telling you, like, listen, we need some more. Okay. Like, you gave the car analogy, I'm seeing it. You gonna honk your horn. Like, I'm not gonna be mad. All right. I'm just gonna wave and honk on. I like that. That's community. We love to see it. Listen, you need to do another book. You need to be in the third edition, because the third edition gonna come. Third edition with Mark T. Davis Jr. is in it. All right. Listen, Mark, this was a fun interview. You said a lot of amazing things, and I'm proud of you, just what you're doing. Like, I got a chance to see your reign and cover your reign, like the student leader spotlight, and see Mr. HBCU. So I'm definitely proud of everything that you're doing. And before we go, tell everyone where they can find you on social media, and also how we can support you.
All right. So my Instagram is the Mark Davis Jr. I don't really post on Twitter. So Instagram is the main thing. And how y'all can support me is, of course, buying the book when it releases, reading not just my chapter, but every other King's chapter. And another thing that you can do, you can reach out to every university that is lacking a king, that don't have a king. Southern does not have a king. And, let them know how important it is that we get kings at every HBCU, because everybody needs to have somebody they can look up to and say, I see myself in them. So that's supporting me. I'm glad TSU has 33 kings currently and 94 Miss TSUs. That is a big gap. So if we can help close that gap at other HBCUs and institutions, that's what you guys can do to support me.
I love that. Listen, he come with the list of all the HBCUs that don't have kings. It's a few. Some have added some in recent years, but yes, it's been a few. Like Alcorn's one school that added a Mr. Alcorn. So maybe it's time for some of the other schools to catch up. And I think that'll definitely be great for them. But Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, proud of you. Keep doing your thing. And yeah, like you're doing your thing. I'm gonna read your chapter, and I'm gonna be in that car. I'm gonna hump back at you, okay? I'm gonna be like, "What's over?" I'm in the car. All right, Mark. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Have a good one.
You too.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to HBCUPulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.